The rain came down in relentless sheets as Emily Carter sprinted across the slick pavement, clutching her worn handbag to her chest. Her shoes were soaked, her hair frizzed from the humidity, and her heart pounded with a mix of exhaustion and determination. Being late wasn't an option today. This interview was her chance to finally land a stable job and provide a better life for her 8-year-old daughter, Lily. She slipped through the glass doors of the towering Halstead Enterprises building, her breath coming in short bursts as she pressed the elevator button with trembling fingers. Inside the gleaming elevator, soft music played, and the mirrored walls reflected her nervous expression. As the doors began to close, a tall man in a charcoal gray suit stepped in at the last second. He looked expensive, polished leather shoes, an elegant watch, and the quiet confidence of someone used to being in control. Emily offered a polite nod, then tried to focus on calming her nerves, mentally rehearsing her answers to common interview questions. The elevator ascended smoothly for a few seconds before a violent jolt shook them both. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely, leaving them in eerie silence. Emily's heart leapt to her throat. "Oh no," she whispered, pressing the emergency button repeatedly, but nothing happened. Panic clawed at her chest. "I can't be stuck right now. I have an interview in 15 minutes, she said, her voice trembling. The man beside her remained remarkably calm. "Looks like we're both not going anywhere," he said in a deep, steady tone. "Let's just breathe for a minute. They'll fix it soon." Emily tried to follow his advice, leaning against the wall, forcing herself to inhale slowly. The man's calmness was oddly reassuring. After a few tense minutes, he chuckled softly. "You know, most people would be screaming by now." She managed a nervous smile. "Trust me, I've been through worse. When you're a single mom, you don't get to panic, you just deal with it." His eyes softened with interest. They talked to pass the time, her initial anxiety slowly fading as she shared stories about her daughter and her struggles. When the elevator finally buzzed back to life and the lights returned, Emily sighed in relief. As the doors opened, the man looked at her and said, "Good luck with your interview, Miss Carter." She blinked in confusion. How did he know her name? But before she could ask, he was gone, leaving her staring after him in stunned silence. Emily's heart still hadn't settled as she made her way through the gleaming marble hallway of Halstead Enterprises. Her clothes were slightly wrinkled, her hair a little frizzy from the rain, and her nerves were frayed after the elevator ordeal. But she couldn't let that stop her. She'd come too far, months of rejected applications, sleepless nights worrying about rent, and the constant fear of letting her daughter down had brought her to this moment. The receptionist offered her a warm smile and led her into a glass-walled conference room that overlooked the city. Emily clutched her resume tightly, rehearsing her introduction in her head. She told herself to focus, to breathe, to be the professional woman she knew she could be. The door opened behind her, and she rose to her feet, ready to meet her interviewer. But when she turned, her entire body froze. Standing there, composed and confident, was the man from the elevator. "You?" she blurted out before she could stop herself. He smiled faintly, his expression unreadable. "Good morning, Miss Carter," he said in that same calm, deep voice. "I'm Alexander Halstead, CEO of Halstead Enterprises." Her stomach dropped. The owner? The man she'd just spent an hour trapped with, venting about her struggles, was the one interviewing her for the job. Emily's mind raced. Had she said anything embarrassing? Did she complain too much? But Alexander's demeanor remained professional, though his eyes held a spark of amusement. "I hope you're feeling calmer after our little adventure," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "Let's get started." Emily tried to regain composure, focusing on the questions he asked. He wasn't the cold, intimidating executive she'd expected. Instead, he listened, really listened, as she spoke about her experience juggling 2 part-time jobs, her commitment to hard work, and her dream of providing a stable future for her daughter. Occasionally, he nodded, asking thoughtful questions that made her feel seen, not judged. When the interview ended, Alexander stood and extended his hand. "You handled yourself well today," he said with quiet sincerity. "We value people who stay calm under pressure." As Emily walked out of the room, her pulse still racing, she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened, something far beyond a job interview. What she didn't know was that Alexander Halstead hadn't stopped thinking about her since that elevator door opened. 2 days later, Emily was in the middle of making Lily's lunch when her phone rang. She wiped her hands on a towel and answered hesitantly, expecting another rejection. But the voice on the other end made her freeze. It was Halstead Enterprises. The woman from HR congratulated her, saying she'd been selected as the new executive assistant to Mr. Alexander Halstead himself. Emily nearly dropped the phone. Her chest filled with disbelief, then joy, and then sheer panic. She had never worked that close to a CEO before, especially not one who'd seen her at her most vulnerable, trapped in an elevator talking about bills and bedtime stories. But she accepted, she had to. It was the chance she'd prayed for. Her first week flew by in a blur of schedules, meetings, and endless to-do lists. Alexander was professional but distant, focused, meticulous, and always calm. Still, there were moments when she caught him glancing at her across the room, a small, knowing smile playing at the corner of his lips, as if he remembered every word they'd exchanged that day in the elevator. Emily worked tirelessly, determined to prove herself through effort, not pity. One evening, the office grew quiet as the rest of the staff went home. Only she and Alexander remained, surrounded by city lights glowing through the glass windows. She stood by his desk, reviewing documents, when he finally broke the silence. "You're doing well here, Emily," he said without looking up from his screen. "Better than most people I've hired." She smiled faintly. "I just don't want to waste the opportunity. You've been generous giving me this job." He paused, then looked up, his gaze steady. "Generous isn't the word I'd use. You earned it. In fact, that's why I was in that elevator that day." Emily frowned in confusion. "What do you mean?" He leaned back in his chair. "I wasn't there by accident. I was reviewing candidates, seeing who they were beyond the paper resume. I wanted to know how people reacted when things went wrong." Her breath caught. "So you were, testing me?" Alexander's lips curved slightly. "Not exactly. I was curious, and you surprised me." Emily didn't know what to say. All she could feel was the warmth of his words and the strange flutter in her chest as his eyes lingered on hers a moment too long. Weeks turned into months, and Emily's life began to transform in ways she hadn't imagined. The job that once terrified her had become a place where she found both confidence and belonging. She'd earned the respect of her co-workers and, more quietly, the admiration of Alexander Halstead. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke to her, there was warmth hidden beneath his polished exterior. Emily noticed how his tone softened when he asked about her daughter, how he always found excuses to pass by her desk, and how he trusted her with matters no one else handled. Yet, she reminded herself to keep her distance. He was her boss, the owner of the building, the man whose world was built from luxury and control, and she was just a single mother trying to make ends meet. One late evening, as the office lights dimmed and most employees had gone home, Emily found herself waiting for the elevator again. Her arms were full of files, and exhaustion weighed heavily on her shoulders. When the doors slid open, she stepped inside, only for Alexander to appear behind her. "Heading down?" he asked with that faint smile she'd grown to know so well. She nodded, suddenly aware of her racing pulse. The doors closed, and the air thickened with unspoken tension. For a moment, it felt like déjà vu, the hum of the elevator, the stillness between them. Emily chuckled softly. "Here we are again," she said. "Hopefully, it doesn't stop this time." Alexander smiled. "If it does, I wouldn't mind. Last time, I met someone who changed my perspective." Her breath caught. "Alexander," she began, unsure what to say, but he stepped closer, his voice low and sincere. You once said you just wanted stability for Lily, a safe life. I've been thinking, maybe I can help with that. Not as your boss, but as someone who cares. Emily's eyes widened, her heart fluttering in disbelief. Are you saying? He nodded gently. I'm saying that maybe the elevator didn't trap us, maybe it brought us where we were supposed to be. The elevator chimed and the doors opened, but neither moved. Emily smiled through tears as she whispered, looks like the right floor, after all. And for the first time in years, she stepped into a future that felt like home.